I stood up at my own daughter's engagement party and told her fiancé to get out of my house. $300 worth of catered food on the table, 42 guests staring at me, and I didn't care about any of it. What happened in the next 72 hours changed everything. For him, for his family, and for a secret I had kept for 11 years. Let me take you back to where this really started. My name is not important. What matters is that I spent 34 years as a line worker at a meatpacking plant in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. I clocked in at 4:30 in the morning, 6 days a week for most of my adult life. My hands are rough. My back has been bad since I was 42. I wear the same 3 flannel shirts on rotation, and I drive a 2009 Ford F-150 that has 160,000 miles on it. I am not embarrassed by any of that. I built a life with those hands. I raised my daughter Nora on that salary after her mother passed from breast cancer when Nora was 11 years old. I did everything myself. Every school concert, every parent-teacher night, every Saturday morning pancake, just the two of us. Nora turned out better than I ever deserved. She studied hard, got a scholarship to the University of Minnesota, became a registered nurse. She calls me every Sunday morning without fail, even now. When she told me 2 years ago that she had met someone, I was happy for her. A father wants to see his child loved. That is all we want, really. Just someone who will be good to them. His name was Preston. Preston Aldridge III, as he introduced himself the first time we met, at a restaurant in Minneapolis that charged $22 for a salad. He was 31, worked in commercial real estate, drove a leased Audi, and had the kind of smile that never quite reached his eyes. I noticed that immediately. I noticed things about people. When you work on a line with the same men for decades, you learn to read a face fast. He shook my hand that first night and said, "Nora has told me so much about you. The plant worker, right?" He said it like that. The plant worker. Not your dad who raised you alone or the man who put you through college. Just the plant worker. I let it go. I told myself I was being oversensitive. Nora looked happy. That was enough. For a while. Over the next several months, I noticed little things. Preston never asked me a single question about my life. At dinner conversations, when I spoke, he would wait just long enough to be polite and then redirect to something about himself. A deal he had closed, a trip he was planning, a conference he had attended. When Nora and I talked about her mother, about our years in Sioux Falls, about the small house on Maple Street where she grew up, Preston would check his phone. One Sunday in October, Nora called me excited. Preston had proposed. She was crying happy tears. I told her I was thrilled, and I meant it mostly. I said I wanted to meet his family before the engagement party. She said of course, and we arranged a dinner at his parents' home in Eden Prairie, one of those suburbs outside Minneapolis where the houses have 3-car garages and HOA newsletters. His mother's name was Gloria. His father was Aldridge Sr., though everyone called him Al. They were polished people, not cruel at first, just careful. The kind of careful that means they are always calculating. Gloria asked about my work within the first 10 minutes, and when I told her I had retired from the plant, she made a sound, not a word, just a sound. A small exhale through the nose, like someone had said something mildly unpleasant. Al asked me what my plans were going forward. I said I had a garden. I raised chickens. I hunted in the fall. He nodded and looked at his wife, and something passed between them that I was not supposed to see. I saw it. The engagement party was held at my home. Nora had asked me to host it, and I was glad to. I cleaned the house for 2 days. My neighbor Bert helped me put up string lights in the backyard. I made my pulled pork, the recipe that has been in my family for 40 years, coleslaw, cornbread, and a sheet cake from the bakery in town. Simple food, good food, the kind of food that means something. 42 people came, my sister June and her husband, Nora's college roommates, a few of my old co-workers, and Preston's family and friends, about 20 of them, who arrived together as a group and immediately formed a separate cluster near the far end of the yard. The evening started fine. People were mingling. Someone brought a good bottle of bourbon. Nora was glowing. I watched her laugh with her friends, and I thought, This is enough. Whatever Preston is, she is happy right now. Let it be good. Then I was standing near the buffet table, refilling the cornbread tray, and I heard it. Preston was standing with three of his friends, guys in pressed shirts and boat shoes, and his mother, Gloria. They were about 12 feet away from me. They had not seen me walk back out from the kitchen. Gloria was looking at the food table, and she said, loud enough that two other people nearby heard it clearly, "I genuinely don't understand how Nora turned out as well as she did, being raised in this." She gestured at my house, my yard, the food. I mean, pulled pork and cornbread at an engagement party. It's so... She searched for the word quaint. One of Preston's friends laughed. Preston smiled. He did not correct her. He did not say a single word in defense of his fiancée's father or his fiancée's home. He just smiled and looked at his shoes. I set the cornbread tray down on the table very carefully. I am not a man who loses his temper easily. 34 years on a processing line teaches you patience. You learn that not every battle is worth fighting, but there is a line. And that night, Gloria Aldridge crossed it in my own backyard, in front of my daughter's friends and my sister and my retired coworkers who had driven 2 hours to celebrate. I walked over to Preston, not to Gloria, to Preston, because he was the one who was going to marry my daughter. He was the one who should have spoken. I said, quietly enough that it was only for him, "I heard what your mother said. I need you to take her inside right now and have a conversation with her, or I am going to ask both of you to leave." He looked at me like I had said something bizarre. He actually tilted his head. He said, "She was just making an observation. You're not seriously going to make this into a whole thing, are you? Nora wouldn't want a scene." I looked at him for a long moment. I thought about 11 years of Sunday pancakes. I thought about the look on Nora's face at her mother's funeral, the way she had held my hand so tight. I thought about every sacrifice I had ever made and never once complained about, because she was worth every single one. I said, loud enough for the people nearby to hear, "Preston, I am asking you and your mother to leave my property." The yard went quiet. Nora came over. Her face was a mix of confusion and alarm. She said, "Dad, what's happening?" I told her exactly what I had heard, word for word. I am not a man who softens things when the truth is required. Gloria immediately said she had been misunderstood, that it was just a joke, that I was clearly very sensitive. Preston put his hand on Nora's arm and said, "This is exactly what I was afraid of. Your dad doesn't handle social situations well." That was his second mistake. Nora turned and looked at him, and I saw something shift in her eyes. My daughter is sharp. She has always been sharp. She said, "Did you hear what your mother said and not say anything?" Preston said, "Babe, let's talk about this later. Not in front of, answer the question," Nora said. The silence that followed was answer enough. They left. Not immediately, but within 20 minutes, after a lot of tense whispering and Gloria announcing that she was appalled and Al standing stiff-backed by the gate. Preston kissed Nora on the cheek and said he would call her. Nora did not say anything back. The party wound down. Most guests stayed another hour, my co-workers, my sister, Nora's friends. One of Nora's friends, a young woman named Heather, who I had known since they were freshman roommates, helped me with the dishes. She said, "For what it's worth, I've never liked him." I told her that was not worth nothing. Nora stayed that night. We sat on the back porch after everyone left, the string lights still on, and she cried for a while, and I let her. I did not say anything negative about Preston. That is not my place. What I said was, "You deserve someone who will stand up for you the way you stood up for yourself tonight." She nodded. She knew what I meant. She called off the engagement 4 days later. I will tell you what I told her. That was not the end of the story, because here is the part I had not shared with anyone for 11 years. When Nora was a junior in college, she received a letter from a law firm in Sioux Falls. Her mother had set up a trust before she died. A small one, she thought, funded by a life insurance policy and a parcel of farmland that had been in her family for 3 generations. Her mother and I had agreed not to tell Nora until she turned 25, so she would build her own life without feeling like there was a safety net. We wanted her to develop the work ethic and the independence on her own terms. What neither of us had fully anticipated was what that farmland would become worth. The parcel was 112 acres outside of Brookings, South Dakota. When her mother bought it in 1987, it was worth next to nothing. Marginal cropland, nobody wanted it. By the time Nora turned 25, a combination of ethanol demand driving corn prices, a regional drainage improvement project, and two wind energy companies wanting right-of-way access had turned that land into something considerably more valuable. The trust, by the time it was fully settled, came to just over $2.3 million. Nora knew about it. Preston did not. I had asked Nora to keep it private when she first told me she was seeing someone seriously. Not because I was suspicious of Preston specifically, that was before I had met him, but because I am a practical man and I had seen what money does to people's intentions. She agreed. She said she would tell him eventually, when she was sure. She never became sure, and after the engagement party, she understood why. When she called off the engagement, she did it by phone, which I know is not the most gracious approach, but she did not feel safe meeting him in person after seeing how quickly he had aligned with his mother against her. She told him simply that she did not think they were compatible, that she needed time, and that she wished him well. 3 days later, Preston called me. He was polite on the phone. Too polite. He said he understood that I had concerns, and he wanted to address them man to man. He said he loved Nora, and he knew they could work through this. He said that families sometimes clash at first, and that was normal, and that his mother was old-fashioned and meant no harm. He said he hoped I would reconsider my influence on Nora's decision. I listened to all of it. Then I said, "Preston, I appreciate you calling, but the decision is Nora's. I won't be influencing it either way." He paused. Then he said, carefully, "I just think it would be a shame for Nora to walk away from a life of real security over a misunderstanding." I said, "She has security." He said, "With respect, I'm not sure a retirement from a meatpacking plant quite covers." I said, "Preston, I meant she has her own." Another pause, longer this time. He said, "What does that mean?" I said, "Have a good evening," and I hung up. 2 days after that, I received a call from Gloria. She was considerably less composed than her son had been. She said she had heard that Nora was sitting on a significant inheritance, and she wanted to understand the situation before things went further. I asked her how she had come to hear that. She said Preston had done some digging and found a public county record related to the land trust. She said, and I want to be precise here because I have thought about this conversation many times, "I just think if there's been a misunderstanding about what Nora brings to a partnership, that's something that should be on the table before any permanent decisions are made." I said, "Gloria, what I am hearing you say is that your son's interest in my daughter may be contingent on what she is worth financially." She said, "That's not what I said." I said, "What did you say?" She had no answer. I said, "My daughter made her decision. I will relay that this conversation happened. Goodbye." I called Nora immediately. I told her word for word what Gloria had said. Nora was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "Okay, I needed to hear that." She sounded sad but settled, like something she had been half wondering about had just been confirmed. She also called her attorney, she had one, handling the trust, and made sure there were no entanglements from the engagement period that required any legal attention. There were not. They had not been married, had not commingled any finances, and the ring had already been returned. Preston called her one more time. She did not answer. He sent 3 texts over the following week. She did not respond to those either. After that, it stopped. That was 14 months ago. There are things I want to say that I think matter, especially to any father listening to this. I did not enjoy that evening. I want to be clear about that. There is nothing satisfying about watching your daughter cry or watching a party you worked on for 2 days fall apart. I did not feel triumphant when I asked them to leave. I felt tired, the way you feel when you have been carrying something heavy for a long time and you finally set it down. relief and exhaustion at the same time, but I would do it again. Here is what I have learned about the kind of person who makes that gesture. The exhale through the nose, the too casual dismissal of someone else's home and life and work. They are not joking. They are not being careless. They are showing you exactly who they are, and they are counting on social discomfort to stop you from responding. They do it in front of others because they believe the embarrassment of a scene will protect them. They think you are too polite, too small, too aware of your own position to push back. I am 61 years old. I have buried a wife. I have raised a daughter alone. I have worked a physical job for 34 years and never once asked anyone to feel sorry for me. I do not have a lot, but what I have, I built myself. And nobody, not Gloria Aldridge, not Preston Aldridge III, not anyone, gets to stand in my backyard and make my daughter feel ashamed of where she came from. Nora is doing well now. She is back in Minneapolis working her nursing shifts, spending weekends with friends. She called me last Sunday and told me she had gone on a first date with someone, a guy she met through a coworker, a high school history teacher from St. Paul named Greg. She said he had asked her about growing up in South Dakota and had seemed genuinely interested. She said he brought flowers to pick her up, not a Venmo request for dinner. I told her that sounded like a good start. I still drive the F-150. The garden came in well this year. Better tomatoes than I have had in a decade. The chickens are fine. I called my sister June last week and we talked for an hour and a half about nothing important, which is the best kind of phone call. And every Sunday morning, right around 8 o'clock, my phone rings. It is always Nora. That is the only thing that has ever really mattered. I have been thinking about that backyard a lot lately. The string lights. Bert helped me put up. The pulled pork that had been in my family for 40 years. The way 42 people went quiet all at once. What I keep coming back to is not the moment I asked them to leave. It is the moment just before it, when I set the cornbread tray down on the table, very carefully, and made a decision about what kind of man I was going to be in the next 60 seconds. That decision did not come from anger. It came from something I had spent 61 years building without ever giving it a name. I think about the choices Preston made that night and the choices he made in the days after. Not the dramatic ones. Not the phone call, not Gloria's strange negotiation about the trust. The small ones, the smile when his mother spoke, the tilt of the head when I responded, the way he reached for Nora's arm instead of answering her question directly. Each of those small choices told me something about his character. And character, I have learned, is just the sum of what you do when you think the cost is low. He thought the cost was low. He thought I was a retired plant worker in a flannel shirt who would absorb the insult and keep refilling the cornbread tray because that is what people like me do. He was calculating, and he was wrong. Not because I surprised him, but because he had misjudged what Nora was made of. He had spent 2 years with her and never understood her. That is its own kind of failure. Nora did something that night that I am more proud of than almost anything I have watched her do. She asked a direct question, and she waited for a direct answer. She did not soften it. She did not give him a graceful exit. She had spent 11 years watching me handle hard things straight on, and when the moment came, she did the same. That is not luck. That is the result of paying attention, of building judgment over time, of refusing to let discomfort become an excuse for dishonesty. The trust, the land, the $2.3 million, none of that is the point. I want to be clear about that. The point is that Nora would have made the same decision without a single dollar behind her, because what she was protecting was not her inheritance. It was her own sense of what she deserved. That comes from somewhere. It comes from years of being taught by example more than by words, that you do not accept less than what is right just because accepting it would be easier. I did not set out to teach her anything that night. I was just a father who heard something he should not have and responded honestly. But that is how most real things get passed on. Not in speeches, not in lessons, but in the small moments when someone who loves you watches how you handle something hard and files it away for later. Preston's family spent 2 years looking at my truck and my flannel shirts and my backyard and seeing a ceiling. They never once thought to look at what was underneath it. That was their failure of understanding, and it cost them considerably more than they expected. I am 61 years old. My back still aches on cold mornings. The F-150 has 160,000 miles on it, and I plan to drive it to 200, and every Sunday at 8 o'clock, my phone rings. Some things you build with money. The things that last, you build with everything else.